Hello and welcome to Katrina's Creations. Today is a requested tutorial on how to separate for sleeves on a sweater. Now, the first thing I want to explain is what type of sweater would you use this technique for. If you are making a sweater where you knit the entire body of the sweater and then pick up stitches and knit the sleeves, or if you knit the sweater in 4 pieces and then sew it all together, this is not the video for this. This is the video for yoked sweaters or raglan sleeved sweaters. So here I have an example. This is a raglan sleeve, and you can see this seam running diagonal. In this case, with this pattern, you are incorporating the shoulder and part of the sleeve down to the underarm as the top down part of the sweater. This type of sweater you are going to separate when you get under the arms. You will separate the sleeves and then you'll do the rest of the body. Then you will go back and pick up those stitches that you've put on reserve and finish doing the sleeves. The same is done with, in this case it's a color work sweater, but this is a yoked sweater where it's all one piece. The shoulders are incorporated and part of the arm down to the underarm. So right now this, I'm holding it upside down, right now this is almost like a poncho for the most part. You've got a neck and then it's coming down off of the shoulders, and at this point it is all one piece across the yoke. So we are going to start with separation and how to do it. Now you will need a couple of supplies in order to do this. You will need something to put your sleeves on. You can do 2 different things. You can use these, which look like giant safety pins. They can be used, however, the one problem is you can only put stitches on or off one direction, because of course you're not going to be able to take the stitches off of this side. So that can affect you. It can be a little bit more tricky to handle. So the easiest thing is to put it on reserve thread. So you're going to need a darning needle and some thread. And I just dropped the thread. So you're going to need a darning needle and some thread and a pair of scissors. So let me get the camera turned around and I will show you how to do this. So based on my pattern, I'm actually going to be starting in the middle of the back of the sweater. So here's my starting spot, and it tells me in the pattern, and each pattern is going to vary, but in this pattern it tells me to knit 76 stitches before I start taking some off for the sleeve. So I'm going to do that first. I now have knit across the 76 stitches. Now my pattern calls for 93 stitches to be separated as the sleeves. So I'm going to use my needle. I just have it still attached to a small ball of thread. I'm going to literally slip the stitches right off. So here you can see me doing it. And I'm going to slip them off until I hit 96. And I'm just feeding them right here onto the thread. I now have 93 stitches put off of the needles and onto this thread that is running through those loose stitches. So now I am going to tie this off. I'm going to clip one end of my thread here. Keep saying thread, it's yarn, it's scrap yarn. And I'm going to slip my needle out. Now the advantage of doing this on scrap yarn is I have 2 ends that I can pull these stitches off of when it gets time to reattach them to needles. Where if I used the stitch holder as I explained earlier, you can only slide the stitches on and off this section. You can't slide them over this. So that's where having them on scrap yarn comes handy, because you can put those stitches back on either way you want to. So I'm now just going to tie the two ends together. And I do tie it in a knot. I don't tie it in a bow because I'm going to just take it apart later, but I don't want that bow to come undone, so that's why it's going into a knot. Okay, I have now separated, like I said, 93 stitches off. Now, this would be underneath my arm. Now, I don't want to have a hole underneath my arm between these two stitches in this area. So I'm going to actually cast on 16 additional stitches. Your pattern again will vary, but these 16 stitches fill in the gap that would be underneath your arm. So I'm just going to pick up the yarn that is still on my right needle. My stitches that are held for the sleeves are just kind of dangling here. I'm just going to kind of tuck them to the back out of the way. And I'm going to pick up 16 additional stitches. Now the way I'm going to be casting on these stitches, because they are going to get cast on to the right needle. If I tried to cast them onto the left, I would have a string or a yarn hanging in between here that would just not work quite right. So I'm going to take this yarn, I'm going to wrap the yarn around the back of my finger like this, turn my finger so it crisscrosses in the back, and I'm going to slide it right on to the needle. You can see it's just pulling it like just snug. You don't want it tight, just snug. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So there are my 16 stitches that I have added to it. This will go under my arm. Now I won't knit them this row. When I come back around on my next row, these will be knitted. So now I am going to knit across the front of the sweater. The sleeve that I set in reserve would be my left arm. So now I am going to knit, in this case it's 151 stitches across the front of the sweater. I now have knit all the way across the front, so now I'm going to begin sliding the stitches onto the darning needle for the sleeves on the right sleeve. So again, it is going to be, in this pattern's case, 96. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, I have finished my 93 stitches, so I am going to tie off the yarn where the stitches are being held. And clip the thread. So now I have both sleeves separated. So now I need to add back in, once again, those 16 stitches to carry underneath the arm. So again, this is my right hand needle, and I wrap the thread around the back of my finger and twist it so it crisscrosses. You can see it right there. So it crisscrosses, and I'm going to loop it onto there so you can see how it. All right, I have the 16 stitches, and now I am going to knit across the other half of the back of the sweater. If you remember at the beginning of this, I started halfway across the back, so now I'm just going to knit those remaining stitches to get back to where I started. And then I will turn the camera around and you can see what it looks like from where I'll be knitting at this point. Now let's take a look at what I have got. Okay, we have the neck of the sweater. We now have the shoulders. And over here, this is a sleeve here and it is tied off. And over here is a sleeve and it is tied off. And the stitches that are on the needles actually are just running where you can see the dark area right around here. So these are completely isolated from the needles at this point. And this is the body of the sweater here. So I will continue knitting all the way around here until I reach the length of the sweater that I need. And then in a separate video, this will be a part 2, I will come back and show you how to reattach the sleeves. Once I finish doing the body of the sweater, I will come back and show you how the sleeves get put back on to the needles and how we complete them from there. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, please give me a thumbs up and be waiting for part 2. Thanks for watching.